What is up, math superstars? In this edition of Mr. Peterson Presents, we are talking about central tendency. So when we give these fancy terms, these are fancy terms for things that you know how to do already. So this is mean, median, mode, and range. And more specifically, we're talking about the mean, categorizing that as what we call the balance point. So our first measure of central tendency is called the mean. So for the mean, this is where we average a group of data points. So come up with the average. This is called the balance points. And so in order to find the mean, here are your steps right here. This is when you add up all the data points. And then you're going to divide by the total number of data points that you have. So now when we use mean, the best use of using mean will be when first the numbers are close together or when we're dealing with grades. And so you might have some questions that come up. What's the best to use, mean, median, or mode? Mean is when the numbers are close together or we're dealing with grades. For median, this is the middle number. When your data is arranged, key point here, least to greatest, put a star next to that. So to find the median, you're going to arrange your data from least to greatest, and then you're going to find the middle number. So if we're going to use median, this is when we have some outliers in the data. So the word outlier for your notes for the fill in the blank, this is data that is far away from the other data points. So you might have data that's maybe 50, 51, 52, and then there's 10 all by itself. And so it's really noticeable. So when you have that outlier of the data, that's when you're going to line up the data from least to greatest and do the median. The mode, this is the number that occurs the most in the data sets. So the best use for when we have the mode is when we're dealing with the most in a category. So you can say in our survey, which category had the most. So who had the most in the favorite movie, favorite sport, and so on and so on. And last but not least, when we talk about the range, this is the difference. So when we talk about difference, we're talking about subtraction between the greatest number in the data set and the smallest number. All right, so now let's take a look at our line plot, and we're going to be have to answer some questions that go along with that. So our first one is we're going to figure out what our exact data is. So in our line plot, we're figuring out where our x's show up and at what number. And so here we have two x's at number 1. So that tells us that there are 2 1s in our data set. So we use those. Now let's go ahead and we have a 2, we have a 4, we have 3 5s. So let's write those out. We have a 6 and we have a 7 in our data set. So now that we have our data, let's figure out what our balance point is. So all the balance point is we're going to add up our data. 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 6 plus 6. And when we do this in our handy dandy calculator, or if you're doing it on your paper, you should come out to 54. So there's our first step, is adding our data. Second step in finding the mean or the balance point is we're going to divide by the total number of points here in our data set. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So all I did was I counted the numbers. So then I do 54 divided by 9 gives me the mean to be 6. So now that we figured out the mean was 6, let's go ahead and figure out what the median is. So the median is going to be our middle number. So in order to figure out the middle number, we're going to take our data, and we're going to start with the first and the last one, and then we're going to cross those out. So we're going to cross 1 and a 7 out. We're going to try to get into the middle. So let's cross out another one in the 6. Cross out the 2 and the 5. And then the 4 and the 5. And what's left is one number in the middle. So our median is going to be 5 for this. And say what happens is if you have two numbers in the middle, you can always add those together and divide by 2 to get the median. So now for this third step here, recap, our mean, our balance point was 6. Our median is 5. The mode is the number that shows up the most. So our number, we have 2 1s here. We have 3 5s. So we can say that our mode for this data set is 5. So now let's go ahead and figure out the range. The range is you take the biggest number is 7, subtract it from the smallest number is 1 to give me a range where the difference is 6. And so just to recap, mean or the balance point, we add up our data and then divide by the total number of points here. Median is our middle number, which was 5. Mode is the number that shows up the most. And our range is taking the biggest number, subtracting from the smallest number. So now it's your turn. I want you to turn to your classwork. What you're going to do next is you might have to be given a line plot where you have to figure out what the data is and then do the mean, median, mode, and range. Or you might just be given the data where you have to sort it least to greatest and then figure out all the different measures of center.